I'm Jennifer Kovacic, the Communications Director at SPAAR, the St. Paul Area Association of Realtors, and today I am joined by two of our Communications Committee members and Realtors, Chelsea Erickson and Nichole Hayden. Thank you both for being here today and for your willingness to share a little bit about your expertise in regard to the real estate industry and some of your recent experiences with your clients. Chelsea, I know you've been a Realtor for 28 years, and I know you've seen the shift from before the recession in 2008 to the recent seller's market, kind of frenzied market we had in the past couple of years, to today's market that seems to slowly be stabilizing a bit.
Yeah, it's slowly stabilizing. Just this morning I was doing a market update for our local area. I do this on video, and we were looking at the days on market, and I was noticing that at this time last year, we were running a days on market of just 2 weeks. And right about now, it's 2 months. So it's kind of like going from 2 weeks to 2 months, which is good, kind of creates a little bit more stability. But, in order to be that neutral market that everyone is hoping for someday soon, we need to be more about 6 months of days on market. So we're headed in the right direction, but we got a long way to go.
Exactly, definitely in the right direction. Nichole, I know that you became a Realtor during the COVID pandemic and started in the midst of a seller's market. So for you, you're kind of experiencing an evolution for the first time back to a more balanced housing market.
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. I appreciate you having us here today. I did join about 3 years ago. The National Association of Realtors became a Realtor. Since I've been in it, I would say it's been a very fiery market. Granted, I don't have experience outside of buying my own house prior to that, so this is what I know. And to Chelsea's point, we're starting to see a little bit of slowdown, not substantial, but a little bit. And it's interesting to see the shift and how that impacts our clients and customers as well as our fellow Realtors. It really calls us to have to stay in touch every day with what's happening so that people aren't panicking about something sitting on the market for 2 whole weeks before it sells. So it's interesting changes. I'm glad to be a part of it.
Well, again, thank you both for being here today. And we're going to be talking a little bit about your experiences. And the purpose is really to look at a snapshot in time of today's market or what we're looking at in these recent current days and weeks. And there are many ways to look at the housing market, but the reality that we've been faced with in recent years, continuing today, is that there is a housing inventory that's tight nationwide right now. And I know this is no surprise for anyone who's been in tune with the market. Locally within SPAAR's 12-county service area, we've seen a rather consistent decline in new listings, pending sales, and inventory levels, with a few exceptions. And a couple of these exceptions are in Rosemont, where the overall new listings from April 2022 to this month were up 22.4%. And then in Columbus, area up by Forest Lake, where new listings were up 4.2%. So those are just a couple examples of some outliers. Again, a snapshot in time, and even a couple sales or changes could make those different percentages. In the Twin Cities region, new listings overall decreased 27.9% to 5,170, down from 7,170 new listings in April of last year in 2022. To provide just a quick snapshot of some other cities throughout SPAAR's jurisdiction outside of the Twin Cities metro, we saw a 52% decrease from 23 new listings to just 11 in Becker, and a 37.1 decline in new listings from 35 to 22 in Faribault. In Red Wing, we saw a 41.4% decrease from 29 to 17 new listings. And lastly, in Rush City, we experienced a 60% decline from 10 listings to just 4. So I'm curious to hear from both of you. What have you seen when you're out and about working with your clients? Nichole, do you want to provide some insight?
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, I think the statistics that you're sharing are reflective of what we're seeing. There does continue to be an inventory shortage. So I'll start with sellers in my area. What I'll share is that for folks who are thinking about getting on the market, this can be an incredibly enticing time because folks have the ability, if priced right, if staged well, and if really put together, a house has a very high chance of selling in its first weekend, securing an offer, that's meeting what the sellers are really looking for, oftentimes with pretty favorable terms. So I think if you're in the right parts of the Twin Cities and your house is in the right condition, I would encourage folks to really look if right now is the best time for them to sell, because we do have high demand. We have a lot of buyers out there looking, and we don't have a lot of homes on the market. On the flip side, I do support buyers who are looking in pretty highly desirable neighborhoods, and they are out prepared to compete. So you have buyers willing to submit offers over asking, willing to sometimes forego inspections, do some of those things that are going to be more attractive to sellers because they know they're in a competitive market. So I think those statistics are pretty reflective for a large part of the cities that we support and what we're experiencing with what the impact to low inventory is. I'll add, I was very specific to say if your home is in a specific condition, because we do see homes, if they're, maybe tired or aged, or they haven't had appropriate updates throughout, or if they're not right priced from the beginning, homes do stay on the market for longer than one weekend. 2 weeks, 1 month, that is still common depending on where it's located and the condition of the home. So I think it's important that our customers and our clients in the region make sure that they're talking to a professional realtor to get the best advice based on what the condition of their home is and what their goals are. If they want to sell quickly, they might want to be putting in some extra work to make sure their home's ready. If they want to get top dollar, that might be a different trajectory.
Great. No, thanks for sharing those insights. I was curious about some of what you covered. Chelsea, what are you seeing in regard to buyers and what they're looking for in sellers and some of their determination to put their homes on the market?
Yeah. Well, I would agree with a lot of what Nicole had said. Homes that are staged and priced right are going to sell relatively quickly. I was just out this last weekend with 2 different sets of buyers. I think we went through a total of 7 homes on Saturday. Of those 7, 2 were already under a multiple offer situation, and those 2, it was their first weekend, right? So as a professional, when I'm setting up showings, I won't set them up too far in advance. I typically want to make sure that the homes that we are going through are actively available so as not to waste buyers' time. And buyers are looking for move-in ready. They really don't want to do much work, and they're willing to pay for that dearly. The move-in ready homes do go fast. Now, that doesn't mean that a home that is tired, like Nicole said, or worn or needs some work, those sell as well, but to a whole different type of client, right? Those are going to sell to someone that's willing to roll up their sleeves. And if they're willing to roll up their sleeves, they're also willing to pay less, right? So you're not going to get market rate for a tired, worn home. And maybe it behooves you to talk with your real estate professional to decide, well, what's the cost of fixing up the home versus the return on value, ROI. I'm always talking with clients about the return on value because early on when we're looking at putting a home on the market for sale with the sellers, it's like in their mind, they may see things that they think need to be fixed or improved, which could add up to a lot of dollars. And from a realtor perspective, you'd be like, yeah, you don't need to touch that because most buyers aren't going to care about that particular item, whatever it may be. And just kind of help those sellers through making those decisions. And I think sometimes it can make the whole selling process less overwhelming to a seller if they have that consultation in advance. So does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
According to recent statistics, prices are reported to remain fairly stable. Right now, the median sales price has decreased 7% to $500,000. Excuse me, I'm going to say this over again. Median sales prices have decreased by 7% to $367,500, according to a recent report by the National Association of Realtors. The changes in the mortgage interest rates have caused some buyers to pull back, with pending sales dropping. What I'm curious to hear a little bit, and you've talked a little bit about some of this, but what other kinds of advice are you seeking, or do you think that clients are looking for realtors for?
Well, I can take that question. When people are home shopping, they're I don't want to say that they're just kind of kicking tires or just looking around. They're usually pretty serious. And so when I'm meeting with a buyer for the first time, we spend I call it a buyer consultation. We spend a good 90 minutes learning about what their goals are and why do they have those goals. We're seeing a lot of, young couples getting married and wanting to get their new home, or now babies have come and they need a bigger home, whatever the case may be. There's usually something really deep driving the desire to move. And to change your address, I like to say. But with that being said, it's like, okay, knowing the desire, knowing the specifics of what they're looking for, and then just keeping your finger on the pulse. Because we also need to talk numbers, what numbers are they looking for as far as a sale price, and usually it's not so much sale price, but it's that monthly budget. What are they going to spend every month? So we got to look at not just the principal, the interest, right? We got to look at what are the taxes, what's that monthly insurance rate going to be, so that they know exactly what those monthly expenses are. So I think to answer your question, they're looking for a lot of guidance.
And I know this varies from realtor to realtor, but in your recent experiences, what kind of buyers are you working with right now? Are you working a lot with first-time home buyers, or the people that are, like you said, looking to change an address?
I am working with a lot of first-time home buyers, folks who got married or maybe are just starting a family, and they're finally ready to purchase a home. I would say for those individuals, while interest rate is certainly something they're thinking about, it's not going to be a deciding factor on whether or not they're going to shift from renting to owning, because owning is still advantageous in that they're paying themselves instead of a landlord, regardless of the interest rate. I do still see step-up buyers, we call them, somebody who bought their first home and is maybe ready to step up. I would say more often than not, it's my step-up buyers who may have hesitation because of the interest rate, because they refinanced during the pandemic when interest rate got below or right at 3%. And now they're kind of feeling like, I don't want to give up this payment, but my family really does need a new house or a bigger house or more space or whatever the rationale is. I think the next month that we get into summer, we're going to see more of those folks making those decisions based on what their family needs is versus the volatility of the interest rate, especially with school getting out. That tends to be a big push for individuals who are ready. They're thinking about, they want to make that move before summer ends and before the kiddos get into school again. So a lot of my buyers right now are first timers. I have a couple folks that are step up, but I would say they're not at the same readiness that Chelsea talked about. They're more picking slowly and consciously and trying to time it specifically based on what the interest rate is that week versus first timers who are going out and making the decision based on the house.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point too when you talk about renting versus owning. I mean, everybody's got to pay to live somewhere, and why not pay yourself versus paying a landlord? And those are conversations I have with the buyers too, especially if they are a first-time home buyer currently renting.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, In today's market, as we're seeing market-wide, inventory levels have been down 4.5%. The statistic in different housing types amounts to 1.4 months supply of single-family detached homes, 1.5 months supply for townhomes, and 2.9 months supply for condos. The property type, and these statistics provided by Showing Time, which SPAAR uses, the property type that has gained the most inventory was the townhome segment, where it increased 9.3%. In terms of inventory, what are you guys seeing? Are you having people open to different property types, or are they pretty set if they want a single-family home, they're looking just at single-family homes, or is there a range that they're open to?
Yeah, that's a good question. You mentioned inventory and you mentioned different property types. You know, if there's an increase in townhomes, I'll tell you that's because they're building more townhomes. I wish I could quote this. I read a statistic not that long ago where since 2015, we have been building less than like 500 homes than we needed. So year over year, our inventory of building new construction homes has been at a target that is 500,000 less than what's needed. So now we're here 8 years into that year over year progression, and I think that's a huge part of it. I am seeing new construction building in here in Minnesota. I'm sure Nicole is as well.
Absolutely.
And been selling quite a few, and that's good. That's what we need. But that's probably where those townhomes are coming from. And if I have a client looking for a single family home, sometimes they're open to townhomes. But if they aren't, they are adamant that they aren't. There's no swaying it. They want all four walls. How about you, Nicole?
Yeah. I have some clients who absolutely want to live in a townhome or a condo that comes with an association that's going to do all of the winter and cleanup and all of the mowing. They live a lifestyle that doesn't allow for them to want to do that. And my folks on the flip side who want a single family detached, they want to mow their lawn every weekend, and they want full control over their house, and they want to be able to do everything in their backyard that doesn't come with some of the restrictions that an association may have. So I personally haven't had many clients who are teetering between the two. Certainly some, but most of the time people pretty firmly on one side of the fence or the other in terms of style.
Sure. And definitely, I think most cities I drive through right now, you can see the construction just booming in the form of townhomes and single-family homes, et cetera.
Yeah, they're kind of not just building one or the other. They're building like a master plan concept where you have all those different options inside one community, which is nice.
Yeah,
right?
Mixed housing. Seeing that a lot more.
Absolutely. I know during the frenzied seller's market during the COVID pandemic, we saw buyers be willing to maybe make some concessions of things they otherwise would want. And I'm curious, are there any typical wants or needs or requirements that you're seeing when you're working with clients now?
That they're willing to set aside?
Either way, things that maybe they would have set aside during those couple of years, but now they wouldn't set them aside again, or things that, maybe they are still willing to make some concessions.
I think the buyers that aren't willing to set aside an inspection are still not going to be willing to do that. They weren't willing to do that 2 years ago, last year, and certainly aren't this year. In terms of features of a home, I think where I've historically seen folks being willing to maybe not have an additional bedroom than their current need, I'm seeing more folks specify their search based on that additional bedroom, oftentimes to fill the need for a home office. So even if it doesn't have a third bedroom, and we need 2, we would prefer 3, to still have a designated spot in the house for that at-home office is really important. I think especially my folks in the first-timer category know that if they end up starting a family 5 years down the road, that may come with a step-up home need. But if they're not planning on starting a family, they definitely need that at-home office space, and that's turned into a non-negotiable. It depends on the season. Some time of year, folks are willing to go with a one-car garage or a detached garage, and certain times of the year, that becomes a lot more real in that we need that attached garage during winter, or we want to, so that both vehicles can be in there.
Especially with this past winter.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then in terms of bathrooms, Chelsea, I'd be curious your experience. I have folks who are willing to do without a second bathroom as long as there's a spot to like add that value themselves or add an additional bathroom. But the more and more folks spend a lot of time at home and working from home and doing so much more there, I think having a second bathroom is incredibly important. So.
Yeah, when numbers of bedrooms and baths do play a large part. In my experience, if people are real flexible about the number of bedrooms and baths, I often coach them that if the house doesn't have it now, I want them to have the ability to add it. And so that when they go and resell, that they're selling at least a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. So we would look for unfinished square footage or things that they'd be willing to roll up their sleeves and do, because yes, it's your home. Yes, you're going to live in it. Yes, you're going to personalize it. But at the root of it all, it is an investment. And I want everyone to be making wise choices in their investment. You know, there was I read a lot of statistics, and they don't always stick in my head where I got them from. But I'm going to quote another one I read recently that said that someone that rents a home, their worth, the worth of their portfolio is just under $10,000. But a person that owns a home, the worth of their portfolio is just over $300,000. So we are helping guide people and making those investments and ultimately increasing their worth. And I think that's just a blessing to be able to do.
Well, that's it.
I had another thought on something. What was that question you had asked? I'll think of that thought here in a little bit.
Sure, just in terms of typical wants and needs or requirements.
Oh, I know. I was going to talk in terms of financing, because as I've been working with different buyers and sellers, here's something I've noticed lately. And I work with a lot of service members, people that qualify for VA financing. And for a season there, it was really hard to get a seller to accept a VA financing, because there's this prejudice that it's very difficult there's a lot of scrutiny on the home, right? There's going to be scrutiny. So with that being said, I have noticed lately that more and more of my VA buyers are able to capitalize on buying a home, and that's exciting. And we've been seeing that. I had one buyer specifically, we've been looking for 12 months to the date. 12 months to the date. And they've tried everything. They've tried going in high. They've tried going in, and offering appraisal gap clauses and all sorts of things. But finally, we were able to get them a home, and they are super excited moving in June 2nd. With VA financing, that buyer in particular could go conventional or VA. Now, if they go VA, they get a better interest rate. If they go VA, they don't have to pay private mortgage insurance. But they were willing to go whichever road the seller would prefer. So if we were in a multiple offer situation and a conventional mortgage product was more beautiful in the eyes of the seller, they would have bought a home under a conventional mortgage product. But if they could find a seller that would be willing to take their VA loan, that would be more ideal for this young family as well. So they were finally able to get the home of their dreams and use their VA loan product. So that's a win.
Yes, and probably a huge sigh of relief after 12 months.
Oh, absolutely. We're with them every step of the way, every day. Mm-hmm.
Let's talk a little bit about a balanced market. Anecdotally, I've heard this come up in conversation a few times in recent months. And while I know many realtors understand the importance of this, it might be helpful information for other listeners to know why it's important and what it means, especially as we've come out of a strong seller's market that we experienced in recent years. And, during that time, a lot of people were in bidding wars and paying over asking. So I'd like to ask both of you. I'll start with you, Chelsea. Talk a little bit about what is a balanced market and what does that mean?
Well, a balanced market would be where you have equal supply and demand. So as I mentioned earlier, if we had 6 months of inventory, that would be considered more of a neutral or balanced market because you'd have enough inventory to sustain the number of buyers that are searching. I think back in the 80s when interest rates were double digits. At the time, I was a young lady and my parents were trying to sell their home. It took them 4 years to sell their home because of those double-digit interest rates. And that was a whole different marketplace and a whole different state, quite frankly. But and I wasn't paying attention to it back then. But when I hear about that, I think, wow, we could be at one end of the spectrum all the way to the other. And when it took them 4 years to sell their home, it basically took them 4 years to achieve their goals, which were to move here to Minnesota, to get onto the lake, to build the family home. It's halted them from reaching their goals and their dreams at the time they wanted to. So if you don't have a balanced market, what could it do? It's going to stop people from achieving their goals and dreams.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. My in-laws faced the same experience. They moved to the Twin Cities with interest rates close to 20%. And I know it was a struggle as they were moving from one place to a new address. Mm-hmm. Nichole, I'd love to ask you kind of that same question or to expand on it a little bit as well.
Yeah. So I think what we look for as realtors in terms of the signs of balanced or what's currently and has been since I became a realtor, seller's market, or in the future, potentially a buyer's market. That's going to include, monthly contract signings, what Chelsea was talking about earlier, the level of new construction that's happening, existing home sales. One thing I'll add on to that I personally notice is also the change of population makeup. I think if we were to see an influx of our single-family homeowners who are of the age where maybe somebody is ready to transition to condo or townhouse living or potentially in a multi-family sort of situation. I think once we see an influx of that population selling, we might start to see a little bit more balancing because there's a lot of inventory that's existing there with folks who own their homes outright and have owned their homes for many years. That can be pretty difficult to convince somebody to move from a home that they own, they don't have a mortgage payment, and this is where they've lived. So in terms of a balanced market, I think what I would share I would look forward to is a situation like I had with my buyers last weekend who are FHA buyers. A home survived a weekend. So all of a sudden we were in a competitive position where we didn't have to offer full asking or over, and we had seller paid closing costs. And those, when you look on a macro level, that doesn't seem like a lot of dollars and cents, but when you're working with people who this is their first home, kind of like the VA family you were talking about, Chelsea, every little bit of that counts. So we still have lots of opportunity to balance this market out that is still advantageous for sellers because there's still lots and lots of buyers out there who are looking for homes. So in terms of a concern of selling, I think more often than not, a seller doesn't have to have that concern. Partner with a realtor who's going to set you up for success for that process. But for the balanced market perspective, I think we're going to be able to see more buyers and more individuals step into those shoes of homeowners, which is beneficial, as Chelsea was saying, to building your worth. It's beneficial to communities because that puts money into all of our communities. One of my colleagues, Amy Peterson, who's on the board, shared recently that I think they've done research, something like $100,000 gets put into a community in terms of investment when a new home is purchased. You think of all the times you go to your local hardware store to buy something for your new home, and then just purchasing power by growing your equity. So I think a balanced market I'm hopeful for and looking forward to because of the potential that it has for our future clients and our communities.
Nice. Yeah, that's a great way to think about it, really, isn't it? I'll just kind of end with saying, according to a March report by the National Association of Realtors, for the last 3 months, and I think even counting, major market indicators, including contract signings and new construction and existing home sales, have been turning positive. And hearing what both of you have had to say with your experiences and your clients, you're seeing that as well, and it's a great place to be. I would love just to ask if either one of you have any final closing thoughts.
Well, piggying back on what Nicole was talking about as far as a balanced market, I am seeing, ultimately people do age in place. And then when it comes time to move, they're either moving because they have to, not necessarily because they wanted to, but now they have to, or the family's stepping in and making choices for them, or they're moving up into assisted living. And I am seeing quite a few of those as well. Typically, that's a lot of what the inventory, and depending on what buyers I'm touring with it, I will have these light bulb moments of, it's interesting that we're seeing a lot of this in this particular neighborhood. And I think as I heard Nicole talking about living there 40 years and no mortgage left, and those are typically also the homes that, I'm not to generalize at all or stereotype, but sometimes those homes might be a little more dated, right? And those might be a perfect starter home for that first-time home buyer that's really ready to roll up their sleeves and make it their own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you for having us, first of all. Appreciate the opportunity to be on the podcast today. First time for everything. And I will also continue down the path of what Chelsea was sharing in terms of maybe some advice. If you have any flexibility on where, ask your realtor, ask your professional on where might be pockets of the Twin Cities where the market is maybe not as hot if you're in the buyer's shoes, to find a little less competition. Also, to share a little bit more of what Chelsea was sharing, my buyers who are willing to roll up their sleeves and build some sweat equity, there are opportunities out there. And that's a really amazing place to build your equity over the next 5 to 10 years. So if you have those opportunities and you feel comfortable and confident, your professionals can also connect you to contractors and folks in the field to do that. Mm-hmm. And then for our sellers or for our agents who are listening, I think one thing I keep reminding myself is to just be patient. Sometimes from week to week, it can kind of feel like things are fiery and moving very quickly, and it's true, they are. But at the end of the day, I think it's just a good reminder that when we get to be in this industry, when we get to help people reach goals and reach those big milestones, we're pretty blessed and lucky to be able to be a part of that journey. So keep that at the forefront when we're kind of in the chaos of a spring busy market. So
that's one more thing I'd like to add that you mentioned, Nicole, and I thank you for that. When we're talking about neighborhoods and we're talking about interest rates, there are certain neighborhoods of the Twin Cities that qualify for lower interest rates. So again, being aware of that and, asking your professional or as a professional, learning more about those neighborhoods so that you can share that with your buyers as well, looking for those pockets. And it's based on income of the area, not income of the buyer. So that's another nugget that I've learned recently to share.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Thanks for sharing that. Nicole and Chelsea, thank both of you for being here today and talking a little bit about your firsthand experiences with clients, with the industry currently. We would like to continue to offer these market updates on a monthly basis. And I'd just like to say, if you're a listener and there's something that you have a question about or something you want to hear, email SPAAR@SPAAR.com, and hopefully we can incorporate it into a future podcast. But thank you both. This was great.
Thank you.
Thank you.